All right. Hello, Internet. We are back with day 3 of continuing Nerd Immersion live streams covering the new content, all a part of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition 2024 Player's Handbook reveal. Yesterday, we talked all about the fighter. Today, we're talking all about the paladin. Now, we're going to see this does appear to be a full 25-minute video covering all of the different subclasses as well as the base features of the paladin itself. I cannot promise you at this juncture that I will not go off on some tangent spewed by or spurred on by something in the comments. We did that quite a bit yesterday. Our 23-minute video or 17-minute video we were watching or whatever it was yesterday, we turned into an hour-and-a-half live stream talking about the fighter, but we did go off on multiple tangents. But that's kind of what you guys know that I'm known for, and we spin off these small things into much longer videos. Now, the Paladin video, as I said, is 25 minutes from start to finish, so we may be covering the entire video. We'll probably look somewhere around, if we go without too much stopping, probably somewhere around the 35 or so minute mark, but it also might be longer based on comments and things we're addressing from all of you. So that being said, buckle up, get yourself something to drink, and get ready because we're about to dive in to this live stream. So it is time to see what's going to happen with the Paladin. Now, we have seen the Paladin in a few iterations in Unearthed Arcana, so it's not like, again, none of this stuff will be wholly new to us. We'll have seen several of these different aspects in the past. We are going to go off on a tangent because I know for a fact what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. They have made pretty significant changes to the Paladin. Some I like, some I really don't like, and that will be smiting, which we will get to, I'm sure, at some point. They'll explain it, and then I might even provide you at the end my thoughts on how you could maybe find a happy medium. So, that being said, I will have a video coming out. I just recorded it before I went live with this. Somebody revealed over on Twitter the kind of class page that dictate, that's the start of the class section of the Player's Handbook that details all of the subclasses. We've known what these have been for a little while, but some of you out there are not really sure what was happening, what subclasses were, so I wanted to make sure that I made a video on that. And as promised, I were hoping to, if I can get it in today, that'd be great. If not, it'll have to come tomorrow or sometime over the weekend, a video covering kind of the 2014 to 2024 transition and what that's going to look like for you. Because we have a little bit from the first video, and a lot of people have questions about the backwards and forwards compatibility of these things. So, here we go. We're just going to dive in, because if I sit here, well, of course, right as my headphones turns off because of inactivity, I don't have forever, right? I have to go get the boys at some point, so I only have at maximum 2 hours that I could even do this stream in, so I have to keep it under 2 hours. I have no other option, so I want to get into this so we can really just get this going. So let's see. Oh, I should probably put it up so you guys can see, huh? Let's go. Here we go. All right, we have put it up to 1.2. We're going to go up to 1.5 times speed and see how that is. If it's too fast or we think it's too much, we'll go down to 1.25. But let's see how we do.
One of the things you'll notice as a Paladin player immediately when you see the new Player's Handbook is that your spellcasting
go down to
has moved
1.25.
from level 2 to level 1. And so you will begin being able to cast spells right away. And this also has a carry-on effect for multiclassing, that if you multiclass now, you will get more slots out of the Paladin part of your multiclass mix than you did before. And when we talk about the Ranger, we'll see that a similar thing happened there. We did this because we wanted Paladin players to start learning how to use their spells right away, because spells are a key part of the Paladin's kit, and having it at second level before meant you were waiting
More new art.
to learn how to use one of the most important parts of your class. So now there's no wait. you start right away at first level learning some spells, which you'll then need to know all about when you get to level 2 and you start doing Divine Smite.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to that. Yes, I just wanted to cover, again, we saw this in the Unearthed Arcana, but Paladins and Rangers now, they still have the similar spellcasting progression as far as level, like maximum number of spells, but you do start getting them at level 1, which makes sense. I've often said level 1 Paladin in the 2014 Player's Handbook is the worst level of any class because you basically get almost nothing at level 1 Paladin. You get the proficiencies with armor and weapons that you normally have, but level 1 Paladin in the 2014 Player's Handbook is Divine Sense, which is arguably useless in most cases, and 5 points of Lay on Hands. That's all you get, basically, as a level 1 Paladin in 2014. At level 2, a ton of crap comes online. You get spells, you get smites, and you get a fighting style, all at level 2. So them giving you the spells at level 1 definitely boosts the power and versatility of a level 1 Paladin. Granted, you don't ever really end up playing at level 1 for too long. You pretty quickly get to level 2, just the way experience and leveling works. For the person asking about the special edition covers, the best way to do that will be through a friendly local game store, which may or may not be an option depending on where you're at. But that's the benefit of pre-ordering from a local game store, is you'll get the special edition covers. And no, Glory Paladin is not my favorite. It was added. Ancients has always been my favorite, though I'm sure we're going to talk about some of the changes that I will not like as much as I had previously. But Glory is a very close second. It just came out so much later that, I basically had my fill of playing Paladins for a while, that Glory was just never in my, circulation.
At level 1, you don't just get spellcasting now, though. You still get Lay on Hands, that iconic ability that Paladins have to heal themselves and others. And you also get Weapon Mastery. And so that means that Paladins, too, are going to get to play with all of the fun that Weapon Mastery brings to any of our classes focused on weapon use. Now, when you get to then level 2, there's more new stuff waiting for you. And at first, you might look at the class feature table for the Paladin and see, oh, fighting style, I had that before. But there's actually a lot of change hiding in there, good updates for the Paladin, because now, when you choose your fighting style as a Paladin, you are no longer restricted to a curated list like the Paladin was in 2014.
Oh, great.
You now
That's
have
fantastic.
access to the full fighting style list that fighters also have access to.
Okay, interesting.
And you also have the option to forego choosing any of those and instead learning some cleric cantrips.
Oh, okay.
So if you decide that you'd rather be more of a spell-hurling paladin rather than leaning harder into your weapon use, you now have that option in the fighting style feature at level 2.
Okay.
That's a big change. They did have curated lists of fighting styles for the Ranger and the Paladin, right? Paladin was obviously focused more on two-handed, like great weapon mastery. They didn't have the option to fight with 2 weapons, whereas Rangers did, but didn't have kind of great weapon fighting. So I like that. Yes, you can unarmed fighting punch smite. They made that very clear in the playtest that smiting works with punches, and that because you have no limit in your fighting style, you can take unarmed fighting as your fighting style. This also gives you the benefit of certain things like blind fighting or thrown weapon fighting. Now, obviously, I'm pretty sure smiting is still going to be limited to melee only. I mean, they may talk about that, but I don't think we saw anything different in the Unearthed Arcana to make me believe otherwise. So it's not like all of a sudden now you're going to be a ranged smiting paladin, because if you were, just put the ranger in the ground at this point. If a paladin could smite at range, that really just, you'd negate the need for a ranger in most aspects, in my opinion. But also it was in Tasha's Cauldron, I think they added a version of the fighting style that you could take this one that would basically give you 2 cleric cantrips, and they seem to have brought that back as well, which is nice. So if you want to focus more on spells than fighting, you can have a couple of cleric cantrips, Guidance probably being one of the big ones you'd probably want to take, and then maybe something that does damage. That also would give you nice consistent ranged damage as a paladin, potentially, on what the options you have. Because, again, one of the big things paladins have is usually they're strength-based. Not always, but usually. So you're usually only limited to thrown weapons. Not a lot of paladins are usually doing bows. You might have one, sure, but ultimately, usually, if you're a strength-based paladin, your dexterity is not very good. Although you can obviously play a dex paladin. That's a little bit, that's an option. You could go and kind of not have to worry about heavy armor at all. But yeah, let's keep going.
This is a part of a theme of us providing more customization options where it made sense in each of the classes. You also now get a feature called Paladin's Smite. This was called Divine.
Here we go.
Smite in 2014. It's now called Paladin Smite because it actually now gives you two things. In 2014, this feature allowed you to use the class's iconic Divine Smite ability, where you burn a spell slot and deal a bucket load of extra damage to a target you just hit. Divine Smite still does that. Divine Smite, though, has now been packaged as a spell. And then the Paladin Smite feature, in addition to giving you that spell and allowing you to always have it prepared, also now lets you cast Divine Smite once per day without burning a spell slot. So what that means is Paladins now, every day, get a freebie Divine Smite. And
that's nice. No one can argue that one free Divine Smite per long rest isn't a bad thing. That is a good thing, especially because it doesn't sound like it's limiting you to the lowest level. So if you have higher level spell slots, you could burn a higher level spell slot to do a Divine Smite. So that's fine. Here's the thing. The reason why people don't like it, if you're asking this question for yourself, is previously the way Divine Smite worked in 2014 is when you connected with an attack, you could then burn a spell slot to do extra damage. It was not casting a spell, it was just a feature that allowed you to do more damage. Similar in some aspects to sneak attack, but with less caveats. Sneak attack, obviously, you have to be in a certain position and have certain triggers met to be able to deal the extra damage. Also, you can only do sneak attack once per turn. Now, Divine Smite was, upon hitting somebody, you can just dump a spell slot and juice in a bunch of damage. A first level spell slot was 2d8 extra damage with an extra d8 tacked on there if it was a fiend or undead. And then that would scale up an additional d8 for each higher level spell slot you spent. Now, because those are dice, they also would double in the situation where you would crit somebody. And because you don't have to choose to burn a smite until you choose after you hit somebody, the benefit was I could wait until I crit and then choose that I'm going to smite and then automatically have all of those extra d8s doubled, so I'm just doing a chunk full of damage in one hit. Here's the thing. Casting it as a spell auto-limits you to once a turn because of the fact that you cannot cast more than one leveled spell in a turn. So instead of being able to, once you have access to extra attack, smite, follow up with another smite, you can only now smite at most once per turn because it is casting a spell. That also means you cannot smite as a reaction because reactions don't allow you to use the action or whatever it is to cast the smite spell. Whereas you could previously reactionary smite as well. That is no longer an option to you. Now, if it follows suit with what's in the Unearthed Arcana, it also burns your bonus action. So you're burning your bonus action to cast a spell as part of one of your attacks to do single smite damage on a singular spell. It also being a spell now means it's counterspellable via counterspell. So another thing to consider as a means to. Now, I'm not gonna listen, all right? I'm one of the biggest champions for paladins in 5e you will ever meet. I love them, my favorite class. I understand 100%. Paladins are I would consider them one of the best designed classes in 5e. So many of their different aspects synergize so well. I also will openly admit, kind of OP, right? Paladins are real good. You want to do the thing, like, I mean, like I said, we even talked about the rogue right there, right? Now, while you can sneak attack at range, certain triggers need to be met to be able to use a sneak attack. If you're a paladin and you hit, you can smite as long as you've got spell slots. So I guess was the limiting factor, but I also recognized that I knew it probably wasn't going to come out of this completely unscathed. I knew they were going to make some tweaks to it. So I knew something was coming. I don't love this change, but we're going to keep listening to the video and see. Let's see what people have to say. No more barbarian paladins or wild shape smites. That is very true, Ghostly Grimace. Previously, a barbarian could take levels in paladin and smite on their barbarian hits, but because smiting is a spell, you cannot cast spells while raging. So barbarian paladin, that is same thing with wild shaped paladins in a druid form as well. That combination will not work because of the fact that Divine Smite is a spell, therefore limiting those options. Does this mean Smite can now be stopped by Counterspell? Yes, it can. Technically, the way Counterspell works, at least from what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana, Counterspell isn't nearly as limiting, I guess. It's basically just you lose the turn in which you spent the spell. You don't lose the slot or anything. So it's not as much of a annoyance as Counterspell can be in the past, but it is, smites are counterspellable in that respect. Smite was a spell and everything but name, and it needed a nerf. Could this still work with Warcaster as a reaction? No, because of how the spells are determined. We'll get there, but I wouldn't necessarily. They're trying to balance it. I think they went a little too hard, but that's fair. But you used to be able to smite multiple times a turn. Paladin already have a lot of bonus action options to fight over smite. Paladins really didn't have a lot of bonus action options at all, realistically. As a paladin of many years, I barely had anything to do with my bonus action unless I took a feat that let me do something as a bonus action, outside of something like Misty Step. Yeah, you bring up a point here. Rakshasas are going to eat paladins for breakfast. That is very true. Rakshasas having that limitation where they can't be affected by spells of a certain level or lower means that smites won't work on Rakshasas at all, because I think 6th level is the highest spell that has to be able to work on a Rakshasa, which means paladins will never have access to that. So far, my only comment section is showing that people enjoy this new version, but the changes to Smite is turning a lot of people away. Yeah, that's generally where we're at, but let's go ahead and keep going.
And so that's going to relieve a little bit some of the pressure on their spell slots. We did this so that paladins could certainly just use all their spell slots to cast Divine Smite, but we also wanted to make it just a smidge easier for paladins to cast some of their other spells if they so choose.
Perfect.
Now, when we get to level 3, where you pick your subclass, you also get Channel Divinity, and here there's a really nice upgrade for paladins in terms of the number of uses of Channel Divinity they get. It used to be that a paladin got exactly 1 use of Channel Divinity, and then that was restored upon taking a short or a long rest. Now, you get 2 uses to start, and every time you take a short rest, you get 1 use back, and then when you take a long rest, you get all your uses back. But then even better, that 2 turns into a 3 when you hit level 11, so you're going to be able to use your Channel Divinity far more often than you could before.
That's a good change. Channel Divinity was nice. It was very limited in a lot of aspects by the subclass that you had, though, because again, talking 2014 purely, Oath of Ancients Paladin, I never used my Channel Divinity almost ever, because the one version was really like a worse version of Ensnaring Strike. And if I happen to find myself in a situation where I was fighting a Fey creature, then technically I could use like the whatever it was that was essentially turn undead, but for Fey creatures. I think there's going to be, from what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana, big changes to those Channel Divinity features to make them a much more viable option for people, therefore making the more uses of Channel Divinity a nice thing to have.
We've also taken the Divine Sense feature that Paladins used to have and turned it into a channel divinity option. And in the process, we've also made it last quite a bit longer.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Divine Sense was very limiting. It was like a one-shot pop in 2014 that like immediately you would know if there's a Fey Fiend, or sorry, Celestial Fiend or Undead. I feel like it also should have worked on Fey, but it did not. Now it's kind of like a longer, almost like I think it's a 10-minute duration.
So if you do decide to use Divine Sense, rather than it lasting only one round, which was how long it lasted in 2014, it now is going to last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And we increased its duration, not only because you're now using your channel divinity on it, but also to make it easier to use, particularly in social interaction and exploration scenes.
Makes much more...
The classic circumstance of the Paladin is at the Queen's Ball and is trying to figure out which of these partygoers is actually a demon or an undead in disguise.
Right.
This longer duration will allow the Paladin to get a bit more bang for their buck when they decide to use Divine Sense.
Great change, this.
We also, at level 5, have made it so that all Paladins now get the Find Steed spell for free. They always have it prepared, and they can cast it once per day without expending a spell slot.
Again, another amazing change, right? You want the Steed to be part of the Paladin's kit. Don't make it an optionary spell they have to choose. I've said this for the longest time in so many videos. If you want somebody to, if you want or are trying to encourage somebody to take a spell or a feature, Game Design 101 in my mind is don't make it an option. It's just like, again, you wanted, like in 2014, a lot of the game was designed around Warlocks taking Eldritch Blast. But it was an option. You didn't have to take Eldritch Blast. And that's fine. You technically don't have to anymore either. But if you wanted to make Eldritch Blast like a thing people would take so they could see all the uses of all the invocations, just make it a class feature that you get. And that's kind of what we're doing here with Find Steed. Find Steed is just a spell that the Paladin gets now. Everybody gets it. All Paladins at 5th level, and they get the freebie casting of it, just further encouraging that this is a thing we want you to have. We're not going to hide it behind a choice of do you prepare this spell or not.
Find Steed is an iconic Paladin spell, and we decided we did not want a Paladin to have to use up one of their spell preparation slots on that spell.
Right.
Reminder, I haven't watched this video yet. I'm just giving you my thoughts as I'm having them, and it seems to be aligning with what's going on here.
And we also wanted you to be able to use it at least once per day without having to use one of your precious few slots, since Paladins and Rangers do have fewer spell slots than many of our other spellcasters. And then on top of that, the Find Steed spell has been completely redesigned for the Paladin so that the Steed can now get more powerful depending on the level of the spell slot you use to cast the spell. And the Steed is now not reliant on particular animal stat blocks, but instead has a stat block all its own, specially designed for the Paladin.
Perfect.
I like this. A lot of people would homebrew. Like, I like this in some aspects, and I hate because I'm very hypocritical in this, and I hate that I am. And that's, like, I don't like the Ranger, like, the animal companions of the Ranger for the Beastmaster being like stat blocks like Beast of Land, Beast of Air, Beast of Sea, or whatever. I don't like that, but I like it for like summoning spells. I feel like because it makes it cleaner. I don't know why like I have such a sticking point between the two. It makes sense for me for Paladin too, because so many people would allow so much more leeway in what could be summoned as a Paladin mount, and that might be why, right? Because the Beastmaster in most versions of it had like a hard and fast rule of like challenge rating this or size level that, and like Find Steed was kind of like, here's a couple of options, but whatever the DM thinks is okay, you can summon as a Find Steed. And that ambiguity lends itself more, in my opinion, to a stat block. And I like that. And the fact that it gets better as you level up removes the need for a spell like Find Greater Steed on the spell list.
So you really feel like you are summoning this otherworldly creature that isn't just a horse or some other creature that you're riding around on, but is this otherworldly being that is there to work with you really as a companion, as this faithful companion there to assist the Paladin and the Paladin's friends.
That's amazing.
I am hoping that with this change, many Paladins will feel more empowered to have these really cool companions present on their adventures.
And that's, again, living out that fantasy and honing in on that wish fulfillment of wanting to smite more and also getting that steed like sooner and easier.
The other benefit is the steed having, like, so many people want to have a cool mount, which I guess works to some extent with the Beastmaster companion. So again, this is one of those, I can't have it one way, like have my cake and eat it too situation. So, like, if you want to have, like, that badass, like, griffin mount, let's say, as a paladin, unless Fine Steed at some point gives them the ability to fly, you could have a griffin. It just would be a flightless griffin, essentially, but you can make it look like what you want because it has a stat block, as opposed to, like, its own unique stat block, as opposed to having to choose an animal. But you also do lose out on some of the customizability because those stat blocks do have benefits and things that they can do that are specific to them, which is interesting that they went back to the full-on animal stat blocks for the druid, but went for the curated stat blocks for, like, the summons and the Beastmaster.
Absolutely. We also have, in the core class, given all paladins a new feature called Abjure Foes, and this gives all paladins a juicy use for their channel divinity. A number of our paladin subclasses in the past had a channel divinity option that was very similar to Abjure Foes, but it was sort of slightly changed in a number
Just like the turn undead thing.
of the subclasses. We decided to take those variants, create a universal version that all paladins are happy to have, and now built it into the base class.
Okay.
We also did some under the hood work on the paladin's aura, partly by turning it into a single aura that gains additional abilities. Previously, the paladin, and particularly based on whatever subclass you ended up picking, would end up having multiple different auras, some of them with different radii, and it could start getting quite confusing keeping track of, like, all of your different auras and how big is this one versus that one. So we sort of cleaned up the whole aura game for paladins by, in the base class and then also in the subclasses that are in this book, all of the auras that used to be different auras before are now all one aura that simply gains new functionality. So it's going to be far easier for the paladin to keep track of what's going on because the paladin now has just one aura that just gains cool new features as the paladin goes up in level.
Also new art, I'm guessing Ancient's paladin here, but also that is, not to trivialize what Jeremy was just saying, that is a simple little tweak that does make things a lot cleaner and easier to understand.
The aura also makes use of a new type of area of effect that we've introduced in the new player's handbook. And it is an area of effect that has been in the game for the last 10 years, but didn't have a name. And we decided to finally give it a name. And I'm bringing it up now while talking about the Paladin, because it's specifically for things like auras and other effects that emanate outward from a particular creature or object. And so this area of effect is called the emanation.
You're going to hear this a lot, the concept of the emanation. A lot of these, again, as discussed, spells or abilities that center on the person and move with you, like a spirit guardians or something, is an emanation, which is, again, another very simple adjustment. Instead of having it like, it has a radius that is centered on you and moves with you when you move, or blah, blah, blah. They can just say that it's an emanation of 10 feet.
We've seen it all over the place in 5th edition over the last 10 years. Basically, anytime you read a feature or a monster ability or a spell that talked about creatures within a certain radius being affected by something, that was basically an emanation. It just wasn't called that. So we have now given that area of effect a name and given it its own definition, just as the other areas of effect in our system have definitions. And you can now find all of those definitions in the Player's Handbook's rules glossary. One other thing in the Paladin that I wanted to chat about, because this is the first of the spellcasting classes that we have talked about, is the new approach to spell lists. So each spellcasting class now has its spell list inside the class description. So rather than making a paladin or a ranger or a warlock or
Go
another
all the way back to the end of the book.
instead it's right there in the class description. But in addition to that, we have worked to make the spell list that's in your class more useful for you. And we've done that by not only giving you all the spells by name, but also every spell's school of magic is listed. We also tell you if the spell on your list requires concentration. We also tell you if it's a ritual. And we also tell you if it has a specific component that you must have to cast the spell. So in those cases, when a component has a specific cost or the spell consumes the component, you must have that component to cast that spell. And so we now tell you in your class spell list if the spell has a required component, so that you now have sort of one-stop shopping for your spells, and you can see at a glance what the spell school of magic is, if it requires concentration, if it's a ritual, and if it has a specific component you must have to cast it.
This is all meant for if you're a player and you play paladins or warlocks, you have less pages you need to traverse to understand what you have and what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The paladin
Nice quality of
subclasses have all received some fun updates, starting with the Oath of Devotion.
Yeah, let's start with the Oath of Devotion. What is new here?
One of the biggies right away
New art,
is
by the way.
Oath of Devotion can now activate their sacred weapon feature as part of the attack action rather
So
than
much
sacking
better.
their entire action to do it.
So
In
much
the
better.
past,
Oh my
it was
God.
so punishing to have to use your entire action to activate it that many Paladin players just decided not to use it.
Yep.
Now,
100%.
as a part of attacking, you can simply decide, I'm going to activate this. We have also
Beautiful
replaced in the Oath of Devotion the feature that was previously called Purity of Spirit with a new feature called Smite of Protection. And what this now does is when you use your Divine Smite, because the Oath of Devotion Paladin is the classic knight in shining armor who is there to protect others, it now means that when you use Divine Smite, you and your allies in your aura of protection have half cover for a limited time. So you have this magical protection that gives you the
Plus
full
2
benefits
AC,
of half
plus
cover,
2 to
even if
dex
you're
saving
standing
throws.
out in the open, as
pretty
long
nice.
as your friends are in that aura of protection.
That's a nice update. Half cover, just being within 10 feet of the paladin is a pretty
And
nice
so this gives
update.
a nice feeling of being a guardian, even when you're blasting your foes with Divine Smite. We've also made it so that the level 20 ability, Holy Nimbus, is now usable as a bonus action instead of an action, because we want you to be able
Huge
to
update.
activate it and then keep going on your turn, rather than essentially spending an entire turn getting ready to do something. And there are a number of places in the player's handbook where abilities that really are just turning on a state have often now been changed from being an action to a bonus action, or in some cases, like with Sacred Weapon in Oath of Devotion, don't require an action or a bonus action at all, and instead are absorbed into another action.
This is such a beautiful, I've been saying simple and clean, I'm going to say it again. Simple and clean quality of life adjustment where, yeah, it sucks having to spend a turn to set up to do the thing you want to do. And especially if it's a super high level ability, the only way you could do the cool thing was to have 2 levels of fighter to get action surge, so you could do the thing as one action surge, and then like do what you actually wanted to do on your turn. So doing things like making them shift to bonus actions, or the Sacred Weapon option where it's part of the attack action itself, meaning you're not actually burning anything other than choosing to use Channel Divinity as part of that strike. Huge quality of life adjustments. Big win for paladins and other classes who have these sort of shifts now. Makes the game go a lot smoother too. Because also, let's talk about some, it probably hasn't happened to too many of you, or maybe it has, and I'm sorry if it does, but nothing sucks more than burning an action to turn on your feature and then getting knocked out before you get to use it. You're a level 3 Devotion Paladin fighting against some sort of undead or fiend, and you're like, I've got this. I'm going to use my action, turn on my Sacred Weapon, and then they knock you out before you get to use it, and now you're unconscious and it's gone. Like, talk about a total bummer waste of a turn. I could have just attacked him and maybe I would have been fine, but I wanted to use the cool thing that I have. and I got knocked out before I could do it. Like, that just sucks. It's like burning a super in a game that has that kind of capability and then immediately getting KO'd by the opponent before you get to do anything with it. It sucks.
Because again, in many cases, we want you to get to the fun faster. The Oath of Devotion is joined by the Oath of Glory. This, for me, is often the paladin who, if they were in a movie, would look at the camera, have impossibly white teeth with a little sparkle on them as they smile. The Oath of Glory appeared previously in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, as well as in Mythic Odysseys of Theros.
Yeah, that's where I first came from.
And it has evolved a bit on its way to the Player's Handbook. And two of the main evolutions that I think are worth talking about here. One is the Peerless Athlete feature now lasts for an hour rather than 10 minutes.
Oh, that's good.
Big change.
This feature is
Glory
especially
Paladin.
useful in exploration context.
Exactly, yeah.
And so we wanted it to be more
much better
useful
usage.
in that pillar of adventure. The other big change is to Aura of Alacrity. The new feature here is that it not only benefits your allies who start their turn in your Aura of Protection, but also if they enter that aura on their turn. This is
nice.
a really major change.
Big
because
updates for that.
before, the Aura of Alacrity, which speeds you and your allies up. It's all about, the Paladin allowing you all to charge forward into battle or some other situation more quickly. The way it was designed before, it was actually extremely difficult sometimes for it to even do anything for your friends.
Right.
Because they had to time it so that they started their turn in your aura, which can actually be more complicated than it sounds when everyone is taking turns in a particular order. This change now means that no matter when a person's turn is relative to the Paladins, and no matter where they are on the battlefield, as long as they make sure to pass through the aura on their turn, they will suddenly get the speed boost.
Much
That's
better.
super helpful. Otherwise, really weird on the battlefield.
Yes,
very
where it's sort of,
limiting previously.
you can have a whole lot of hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
One other thing I would love to mention about Oath of Glory that relates actually to all of the Paladin subclasses is that we have vetted their Oath spell lists in each subclass. And so players are going to see not only in the Oath spell list, but also when you get to the Cleric, the Domain spell list, and in the Warlock, the Patron spell list. All of these lists have been vetted and in many cases updated with different spell options.
That's great.
I'm thinking
I hope there's
of this now while we're talking about the Oath of Glory, particularly because the Oath of Glory list in getting updated even includes a brand new spell appearing in this player's handbook for the first time. So when you reach level 17 as a paladin, and if you have the Oath of Glory subclass, you get a brand new spell in the game called Yolan's Regal Presence. And this is a spell created by the Queen of the Elves in the world of Greyhawk, and it allows the paladin and anyone else who casts the spell to, as it says in the name, have an extraordinarily regal presence that will cause people to fall down on their knees and also potentially take psychic damage from just how glorious you are. But I wanted to bring that up because I hope everyone will take time, when they come to their favorite subclass, if it's a subclass that had a little spell list, take a look at that list, because you're going to find often that not only have some of the spells been swapped, one spell for another, but sometimes the new spell that's on the list is a brand new spell for the game.
Perfect. So we have the Oath of the Ancients Paladin. This is one of my
here we go.
favorites. It feels like the Green Knight. It's a very unique feel from any other class or subclass.
And when we created the Oath of the Ancients originally for the 2014 Player's Handbook, it really was in answer to the question, what would a paladin look like who had been a part of elven culture or another culture that maybe is less sort of knight in shining armor, but still would have these noble oaths and have a lot of the dedication that we associate with paladins, but again more of a nature or a druidic or elven aesthetic. And
it's my personal favorite, and it also, because it basically, Paladin being my favorite class and me having in the past a serious affinity for nature and woodsy style characters like druids and rangers, this definitely felt like the best to me. And honestly, it's funny that I mention it. In my first ever 5e campaign that I played with a bunch of friends, I played up so much the nature abilities and things that the Oath of the Ancients Paladin had that one of my party legitimately thought I was a ranger for 3 or 4 sessions before he realized that I actually was just a paladin with nature abilities and like really role playing up those aspects.
So the answer to that was the Oath of the Ancients. The art for it is wonderful, as is the art for all of the subclasses in the book, and we have made some enhancements to the Oath as it has migrated into the new player's handbook. One of those is that the subclass's aura of warding at level 7 now...
So this is a change. Aura of warding, very powerful in the past. Aura of warding was resistance to all damage from spells, which was pretty sick if you dealt with a lot of like NPCs and spellcasters. They have changed it significantly to just, which he'll talk about here in just a second, it provides just like resistance to certain damage types, which in theory is more broad spectrum because those damage types you'll be protected against regardless of their source, spell, or otherwise, but...
It's just straight up gives people in your aura resistance to necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage.
Previously, again, like, it was great to get hit with a fireball and then have resistance to fireball. Necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage are lesser resisted damage types. So pack this with being a species that gives you resistance, like a tiefling, maybe resistance to fire. Now you're rocking resistance to fire, necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage. That's pretty powerful, but yeah.
Because this paladin is all about protecting people from, in some cases, foes from beyond.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why their aura now will protect you from the magic of, you know, necrosis, which we associated with the negative energy plane, radiant damage, which is from the positive energy plane, and then psychic damage, which we often associate with the far realm.
And radiant damage can feel also very creepy. It doesn't have to feel like celestial and happy and good. This can also be something, this can feel like radioactive.
Exactly.
So it's not always a benevolent or natural source.
Exactly. Just as necrotic damage is not always malevolent,
Right.
Because death can be, it is a natural part of the world. Also, in the subclass, we have increased the range of the subclass's Nature's Wrath ability, which is their entanglement ability. So if you love playing an Oath of the Ancients Paladin and tangling people up in roots, well, now you can do that even easier because the
Again, it's a usable option now.
range of that ability has been extended. We have also, in the subclass's Undying Sentinel ability, made it so that if you pop back from 0, you don't pop back with just 1 hit point. And just as we did in the Barbarian, you now pop back with a bunch of hit points so that you don't get knocked down immediately after you popped back up.
Perfect.
A nice little, again, quality of life feature here to give you more than just 1 singular hit point when you go to 0. Really does make you feel more like an Undying Sentinel than just coming back with the 1 HP.
Those are the main changes here, and really just our effort to make this great subclass just even better at the fun stuff it was already doing.
I love that.
And again, outside of the aura being what it is now, I do think Oath of the Ancients just overall updates and improvements in every aspect.
Even the subclasses that are very tried and true are still getting, you know, a facelift, an upgrade, and getting something extra to do.
And that is true of every subclass in the book, that no matter how solid it was, it's getting some new upgrade. And so that leaves us then with the Oath of Vengeance. This was another subclass that was super solid, but still has some fun new toys within it. One of the biggies, because it affects the subclass's most iconic ability, its Vow of Enmity, is you no longer have to use your bonus action to activate your Vow of Enmity. This you can now use simply as a part of the attack action.
That changes
And
everything.
we've also made it so that if the target of your Vow of Enmity perishes, you now have a window of time where you can transfer it to somebody else. Because it used to be that you would place it on somebody, and if they got felled quickly enough, it's like, well,
I guess that's done. Or someone else kills them,
And so now, similar to how Hunter's Mark functions, where you can move that spell around, you can now also move around your Vow of Enmity. And
so much better. Similar in nature to what we were talking about Sacred Weapon, the concept of changing Vow of Enmity to be part of the attack. huge benefits. Same thing with being able to transfer it to other people also makes it so that, again, if somebody else kills them, it's not like you just burnt your thing. You have options here, and that definitely is big quality of life improvements.
At level 20, with their Avenging Angel ability, we've made 2 major enhancements. One of them is you can now activate it as a bonus action instead of an action.
Thank you.
And it lasts for an entire hour. And we did this because this feature includes flight.
Yeah. Okay.
And we wanted the Oath of Vengeance Paladin to be able to use that flight to pursue somebody. And so watch out.
Go right into evil Superman mode and hunt them down. The new player's handbook is available for pre-order right now.
All right. So there we go. That's not what you want. This is what you want. Let me go ahead and close down that, and let's pull up the Unearthed Arcana real quick, because I want to just take a look at one thing. For those of you talking about, we were talking about smites. So what I'm going to come out and say regarding these updates here, we're going to go to Unearthed Arcana. Was it 6 has the Paladin? I believe. Check. 6. Unearthed Arcana 6 has the most recent Paladin updates. So here's the thing. I'd say across the board, I like every update made to the Paladin other than Smites. I'm not saying they don't need an update, and I'm not saying that nerf isn't incoming for it, because I get that. I truly do. As a fan of Paladins, it makes sense to me. I think they might have gone a little too hard with the nerf on it, but let's go ahead and why does it keep going over here? Let's go ahead and take a look. So this was the latest Unearthed Arcana that had the Paladin in it. And it sounds like from what they said, most of that stuff, if not all of that, has applied to what you're getting here in the final version of the Paladin. So let's go ahead and do some comparisons. Right? If we get Lay on Hands at level 1, again, big thing is they changed Lay on Hands to be a bonus action, which is a nice change. Notice they also didn't talk about Divine Health, the immunity to disease, because I have a feeling that diseases are basically being removed from the game entirely. Weapon Mastery here, again, as mentioned. And then here's Paladin Smites. Now this looks to get it here, so let's take a look. You have certain spells ready when you reach a certain Paladin level, which they have them all listed here. In addition, you can cast one of your prepared spells from this feature without expending a spell slot. Must finish a long rest before you can use it again. That all sounds true based on what they said. Fighting style as well. Here it was limited to the options. It does appear that they've removed that limitation and increased that. We have Channel Divinity, again at 3 with Divine Sense. And then obviously your subclasses. Faithful Steed, Aura of Protection, Abjure Foes. It sounds like this might have come on a little bit earlier now, not quite so late at 9th level. Again, Radiant Strikes appears to still, well, we don't know, but I think it's probably still going to be there, which is basically the old improved Divine Smite where you just deal an extra D8 Radiant damage, which is a nice thing that you should still be able to have. And then, again, Restoring Touches, Lay on Hands improvements, and so on, right? Let's get into the Smite spells, though, because that's where it is. You'll obviously notice if we were to scroll through, now here, Sacred Weapon at this point was a bonus action. They've obviously changed that to be as part of the attack action. So there's a lot of cool different tweaks that we can already discuss that we've seen just based on what we have here from playtest 6 versus what they just talked about in the video. So you can already tell that there has been adjustments based on that alone. Gift of Alacrity was back then, still starts their turn in the aura. They obviously have changed that. Aura of Warding does appear to be the same. So some of these things basically made their way through in their entirety to the final version. Some of them obviously had tweaks. Vow of Enmity, again, being a bonus action. They did still have the opportunity to let you transfer it. Here, Avenging Angel was 10 minutes. Obviously, we know now it's an hour. So a lot of adjustments there. Let's go down and take a look at our spells. Watch your eyes here as we scroll. Okay, so we want Divine Smites, obviously the big one we want, right? So if this follows through exactly as it was, Divine Smite, Evocation Spell Paladin, casting time bonus action, which you take immediately after hitting a target with a melee weapon or an unarmed strike. As you hit the target, your strike grows with divine power. The target takes an extra 2d8 radiant damage from the attack. The damage increases by a d8 if it's a fiend or undead. And then again, it upcasts as normal. Now, my problem with this is that it uses a bonus action. Because you are essentially saying, if you want to use more damage, you have to burn a bonus action to do so. Now, technically, you could still use your action to cast a cantrip, but you're also eating up your you're casting a spell, meaning you can't cast any other leveled spells here with your action. You're using your bonus action to cast a spell. It also is basically taking the same functionality of what Divine Smite was, allowing you to do it on a singular attack, and then also burning your bonus action to do so. That seems very counterintuitive to me to what they had been doing. You use the action to attack, correct, and then you're using your bonus action to cast Divine Smite. I feel like just limiting it to once per turn might be a better call than having to force it to be a spell, and then this weird interaction with using it as a bonus action immediately after you hit a creature. It just feels weird to me. And then obviously if we were to scroll through, you'll see that a lot of these also have, there's all the different ones right here. Banishing Smite, that one is concentration. You've got Blinding Smite. Let's see. Shining Smite, Staggering Smite, Searing Smite, Thunderous Smite, and so on. Wrathful Smite. Some tweaks to the damage for some of these. For example, Wrathful Smite got a nerf in damage, I think, because it's down to a d6 necrotic damage. I thought it used to be 2d6, but maybe I'm thinking of Thunderous Smite. Yeah, that actually might be the same. But either way, essentially to do a smite, you're limited to one smite a turn, and it's going to use your bonus action to do so to cast said spell. Now again, you do get the one freebie per long rest, which is definitely nice. I'm not fully in love with this version of it. I'm not entirely sure what the best option is, assuming that this does in fact carry through. Because right now we're going off of Unearthed Arcana 6 to get this information. We do know that the smites are in fact spells going forward into the final product, as mentioned in the video we just watched. But we also don't technically know what the final product will look like. So there may be some tweaks to that. As we saw, there were already tweaks quite a bit to the Paladin based on just what we had mentioned here. So again, to those of you bringing up dual wielding, because of the fact that Paladins now can wield two weapons, unless you're wielding light weapons that have the Nick property, you won't be able to do two-weapon fighting because you'll be burning your bonus action to utilize the Smite spell. Also, if your subclass has access to good bonus action spells, again, I've said it before, Paladins don't usually have a ton of great bonus action utility. So I guess to some extent you're not really hurting them too much because not all the time do Paladins have a lot of usage. Although again, with the changes of all of these forms and whatnot now being activated on a bonus action in some instances, you gave Paladins more usage for their bonus action at the same time as taking away the uses for their bonus action by making Smite be triggered off of that. Again, Oath of the Ancients Paladin still does get Misty Step. No Misty Step and Smiting anymore. So, I don't know. I don't love this. I'm fine with limiting Smite to once per turn. I'm even fine limiting it to once on your turn, so you can't reactionary Smite. I mean, I don't think making the Smite be a reaction as opposed to a bonus action, although that feels, the way they've written things, having the Smite spell be cast as a reaction almost feels more like it makes sense, based on just like, it's a bonus action to cast a spell immediately after you hit to juice up this damage, which doesn't make sense, like, immersion-wise to me. Reaction would make more sense, in my opinion. But I would be fine making it basically similar to the Warlock's Eldritch Smite, where it's usable once a turn. And I would say make it usable once per turn, once on your turn you can use one of these spells, blah, 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 however you want to word it. So that essentially you can't do this as a reaction with like a sneak attack or something. I'm sorry, with a reaction with an opportunity attack or something. And you can't just juice up a ton of damage in one turn, because especially if you have stuff like action surge or other ways to get multiple attacks, you could just smite, and keep going. Especially if they follow through with some of the monk updates we saw in Unearthed Arcana, where like later on Unearthed Arcana monk gets 3 attacks with its unarmed strike. So there could be like weird shenanigans, because smiting now does work with punching, where you do like Paladin Monk and you could have potentially had 5 attacks in a turn, and then you could do 5 smites in a turn. Seems like a lot, so I get limiting the number, but it just feels weird to tie it to a spell to me. Again, that's my own personal opinion. Maybe I'm totally alone in this, but it just feels awkward to tie it to a spell specifically. I would be more than fine to limiting it to once a turn. I think that that's a reasonable way to get around the sort of Nova damage that Paladins can do, but I don't know. Again, we're not really fully sure. We're just assuming, based on the fact that they didn't mention anything different, that the Unearthed Arcana version of Smite spells that we saw here are what we'll see in the final product. Now, maybe we'll all be pleasantly surprised, but I feel like they mentioned most of the big shifts and changes if they differed from the Unearthed Arcana in any way, like in a noticeable way. So the fact that they didn't really bring that up too much, I'm thinking means that we're probably going to get a similar, if not the exact same version as in Unearthed Arcana 6 in the final version of the book. Yeah, using it as a spell, using it as an alternate means for spending a spell slot made it feel like a different thing. Smites were like rogue sneak attack, a pool of once per turn that improve with levels. That could be something too. There's different ways to go about it. I'm in agreement. I think it's fine that Paladins are a little bit more in balance power-wise with other classes by making these adjustments. I don't like it. Personally, I hate it, because I'm a Paladin. Like, I love Paladins, and I love how much I loved being able to, like, I remember going out and buying at one Gen Con just a bunch of color match D8s, so that if I ever crit as my Paladin with the max amount of dice, the fistful of D8s I could throw for high level Divine Smite, crit, regular weapon damage, improved Divine Smite, and had like 14 D8s ready to roll of the same damage, like same die color way, so I could just be like, bam, here's all my dice. You know, and yeah, have I had a good time dealing over 100 damage in a single turn to an enemy? I've enjoyed that quite a bit. It's a great time to do so. I've done, I've averaged in the 75 to like 150 damage pool areas, depending on what kind of creature you're facing. And I really enjoy that. Seeing the big numbers makes the dopamine hit, for sure. But I get the concept of a nerf. I just feel like it might have gone too far. Here's the other thing, though. I'm not so pessimistic that I won't try it. All right? And I'm going to say the same thing to all of you. The same thing I've been saying since the start of this Unearthed Arcana process, started however many years ago. I can have all the opinions I want and hate it or love it as much as I want to here in a vacuum of a live stream telling you what I like and what I don't like. But until I get a chance to actually sit at a table utilizing these rules and playing this version of it, I don't know that it sucks. Now, in my head, can I think that far ahead and kind of role play it out in my mind? Yeah. And I think I'm probably landing in a still on the camp of I don't love the changes. I would like some sort of middle ground. But I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to play it, and I'm going to play it as written without tweaks from a DM. And I will come back if I get a chance to do that once the book launches. And I will come back and I will make a vlog style video and tell you, hey, here's my experience playing the 2024 Player's Handbook Paladin as written. What are my thoughts on it? And then that way I can give you a real fact. And I would love it if everybody with any of the adjustments for any of these classes to just, like, we have so much negativity in the space. Some of it warranted, sure. But there's so much negativity in the TTRPG space in general. Do we really need other people out here just constantly dogging on all this stuff all the time? No, we don't. You feel free to do it. Negative comment videos do really well. I know it. Anytime I make a video about how much something sucks or how much I hate these things or the worst whatever, the numbers track through the roof. That's just how the internet is. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon to hate on something. And I get that. I truly do. I know that I can make all negative content all the time, and my numbers would just skyrocket because people just want to hear people bitch about stuff. And I get it. I watch content about people bitching about different things. I get it. I'm just as bad as everybody else. I enjoy watching people dogpile on something that I like, and if it doesn't go well, I mean, there was that whole string during the early 2000s of just angry reviewers for just about anything you can imagine. And the reason that they could do that is because it worked. Like, it was a good business model. But I urge you all to give it a fair shake. If you decide that you're going to go this route and buy these 2024 books and live in this new 2024 D&D 5e experience world, I encourage you to try the thing you might think sucks and see, right? Talk to your DM about it. If you're like, hey, I really don't know if this is going to be as good as I think it is or as bad as I think it is. Are you cool if I try this? And then, like, maybe if it doesn't work, would you be cool if I changed classes or characters? Figure that out up front. Or maybe you won't even need to have that conversation. You're willing to commit to the bit. But I want to give things a try and see. Because I won't know. Because I've played in games where I've played classes that everybody says are garbage or are broken. And I've had the complete opposite experience. Again, I've said it before. I've played a monk in 2 different campaigns in 5e that went up to like 16th, 17th level. And a lot of people, and I get the concept of why some of the monk stuff is so bad. I truly do. Having played it, obviously. But people dog on the monk pretty hard. And I had nothing but the best experience with both of the monks that I played. And honestly, the first monk that I played, I didn't use Stunning Strike at all. I tried Stunning Strike once in one fight, and it didn't go off. So I just never Stunning Striked again for the rest of that campaign. And people are like, monks are so broken, Stunning Strike is so powerful, and I just never used it. So I just was like, I don't know, I didn't really feel like that. And then in the second campaign, I used Stunning Strike all the time. And it did feel broken. So I get both sides of the spectrum, but both of those experiences gave me different aspects and outlook on what I thought the class could be, and I saw different sides of it. But that's because I played it. Now, I also recognize that what I'm preaching to you is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Just telling you to go play it is great, but if you don't have access to people to play at a local game store, a friend group, online, whatever, then unfortunately I can't help you there, and we'll just have to live into this space where I talk at you and we kind of have conversations in the chat or otherwise about this. But if the opportunity presents itself to play these things, I would recommend that you give it a shot. Anyway, that's my diatribe. I'm done now. Yeah. So, anyway. And you know what? To that point, right now, without having the whole picture in front of us, there might be some weird-ass, busted, broken combo that nobody knows about until everybody gets it in their hands, and then all it takes is one Reddit thread or forum post where somebody's like, hey, wait, if I do this spell with this multi-class and this magic item, does this work? And then all of a sudden somebody's like, oh shit, that does work. And then it's like brain explosion where you realize, oh my god, because of the fact that this smite works this way and the fact that it is a spell or is a bonus action, maybe there's a magic item that allows you to juice up damage on things if you cast a spell. And previously that wouldn't work with Divine Smite, but now that it's a spell, it will work and it'll do even more damage. That's a possibility, right? We don't know yet. So without the whole picture of all the books together, we don't really know at this point whether or not this is, we can make opinions based on what we know from the past, but there might be more benefits to this, right? Like, probably when people were looking originally at polearms, people were like, man, I'd rather take a greatsword, until somebody realized that polearms with Polearm Master and Sentinel is a deadly combination to just shut down the enemy. But until somebody put those things together and string that together as a thing, what, like, people might have just been like, why would I do a D10 glaive when I could do 2d6 with a greatsword? And then somebody figured it out, and then all of a sudden it became a crazy thing. Same thing with the concept of like the coffee lock, right? Why would I ever want to forego long rests? Well, technically, depending on how your DM rules it, you might not ever have to, because you can just juice through all these spells with infinite recycling sorcery points, right? Stuff like that. Anyway, that's me. I'm done now. I've done my rant. And we've managed to cover the entirety of this in an hour as opposed to an hour and a half yesterday. So that was something. So I'm just catching up on all of your guys' comments just to see what people have to say. People don't like what they don't know, and a lot of people hate change. Play your game how you choose. You're also correct, Danny, right? That's also an option, right? You can just live in the world of the 2014 Paladin, right? We'll have to see what the official kind of like, here's how you translate your 2014 version of a character to the 2024 rules. Some of that will be different, and I'm not sure how that would work specifically, because in 2014, Divine Smite was a feature, and in 2024, it's a spell. So there's going to be some like lines to consider, but I'd say for the most part, with the exception of the Paladin Smite, everything I've seen from 2024, I've been more than on board for all of the changes. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some shifts that happen that people are probably not going to happen or not going to like. Like, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't think we've seen it. Let me see. Have we seen this as a spell? Let me scroll down and see if it's in this particular one. But I have a feeling that we're going to see an adjustment to a spell that's going to make people really mad if it hasn't already been done. I'm going to just guess that, and I think they might have even talked about it in a video, that Spiritual Weapon is going to go to a concentration spell, and I think that's going to piss a lot of people off. But that's going to be another one of those, like, it kind of felt like it was going to get there, like it felt almost too powerful as it was, so like it was in need of a nerf, potentially, depending on how you look at it, but oh, you guys are so sweet. Positivity is what draws me in. The negativity is too exhausting. It is. It's a lot. I get it. I hope somebody did get a timestamp. By the way, if anybody wants to comment timestamps on this video after the fact, I will absolutely use them to update chapters into the video, like live. Like, I'll paste them into the description so people can get those. Is there a world where we can craft a spell scroll for Divine Smite? Yeah, I think so, Rob DeFranco. You can, because it's a spell. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to craft scrolls for Divine Smite. Another example of what we were just talking about, right? Could a sorcerer paladin use metamagic on their smites? Yes, a paladin with metamagic adept, if that's still an option in this, in theory could apply their metamagic options to smites, because smites are spells. See, now you're starting to think about what I was talking about, where there may be weird combos we just haven't figured out yet because we don't have everything in front of us. But yeah, there are things that might trigger off of the fact that it is a spell that actually end up benefiting you more in the long run. So to your point, yes, it looks like Divine Smite does have a verbal component. So in theory, now also Divine Smite could be blocked by a silence spell, something that also wasn't the case in the past, something to consider possibly changing. Maybe that changed in the final version as well, because again, right now it is listed in the Unearthed Arcana 6 as having a verbal component. Subtle spell Divine Smite prevents counterspell. Yep, that would absolutely work. Again, we're basing this all off the assumptions from UA 6. Dual wielding Paladin Sorcerer Twin Spell Smite. Depending on, I forget, they changed the way Twin Spell worked, but potentially. If you use Meta Magic on any spell, then yeah, Meta Magic Smite. Yep, Twin Spell is different if not removed. It was changed. They did give it a different name, so we'll have to see how that works. In my experience, when experts do something that doesn't make sense, there's a good chance that there's a good reason behind it. Yeah, agreed. Spiritual Weapon was one of those, if you aren't casting this, you aren't doing it right spells. Yeah, so I imagine they're going to make you choose between Spiritual Weapon and Spirit Guardians. It's kind of basically what it's going to be like. They did change Spiritual Weapon. Yeah, I thought I remember seeing that in one of the Unearthed Arcanas, that they changed Spiritual Weapon to Concentration, which, again, I thought that was like, that's a change you could kind of see incoming. Yes, exactly, Wesley Russell. They can't. That's the thing. You're going to have to pick. In my mind, it's basically going to be Spiritual Weapon until you get Spirit Guardians, at which point it will be Spirit Guardians from then on. Twin Smites equals the Arcane Cleave. Let's see if we can find the Sorcerer where they show what the updated Twin Smite or Twin Spell is, and then see how that would apply. Was that UA7, I think, had the Sorcerer? Yeah, let's go look. Because that would be a good question, a good concept here. Is this it? Yeah, UA7 had the Sorcerer. Let's see what the updated version of like Twin Spell or whatever they ended up calling it would be. And then we can maybe get an idea of what kind of nonsense we can do with meta magic and smites, because that might give us a whole, like I said, a whole new slew of options that we didn't have before. Okay, I've got the list. I would much rather a big bad counter my smite as opposed to wizard spells option. That's true too. Spiritual Weapon was originally intended to be concentration. Yeah, here we go. Let's go ahead. I pulled up the sorcerer list from UA7. Okay. Careful Spell, not going to really be a thing, because that's like when you're dealing damage, you can help people not take damage from it, so that's not a thing. Distance Spell, when you cast a spell that has a range of at least 5 feet. Let's see. That I don't believe works. But let's just check real quick. I think Smite is self-range as well, but it's worth considering that if Smite has a range, you might be able to range Smite. I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure it's the same as it's always been. But let's look. Let's just clear this up, because this could be huge. Self. Damn. Yeah, they're all range of self. Boy, wouldn't that have been some shit. Huh? If they had a range of like 5 feet, and then all of a sudden with Distance Spell, you could smite out at range. Wouldn't that be wild? But no, unfortunately, it's self, so that doesn't count. And it's not touch either. If it was touch, that would work as well, unfortunately. All right. Empowered Spell. When you roll spell damage, spend a sorcery point to reroll a number of the damage dice up to your charisma modifier. You must use the new rolls. So this would work, technically. Empowered Spell would allow you to reroll your smite damage. Something. Extended Spell. When you cast a spell that has a duration of 1 minute or longer, you can spend a sorcery point to double its duration. So some of these do have duration base, like Banishing Smite doesn't really have a, I think that's if they're on the demiplane, when the spell ends, it reappears in the space it left. Okay, so you could double Banishing Smite's time to be 2 minutes. Blinding Smite is a minute. So let's see, the target hit by the strike takes damage, has the blinding condition until the spell ends. That's a non-concentration 1 minute. That could become 2 minutes. Let's see. Searing Smite, again, at the start of each of their turns, they take a d6 until the spell ends. That could become 2 minutes. Shining Smite, again, they can't become invisible. That could become a 2 minute thing as well. And Wrathful Smite could become a 2 minute thing. So, well, no, some of the, it's not, is it the casting time? When it has a duration of 1 minute or longer, you can spend a sorcery point to double its duration. So any of these spells that have a duration of a minute or longer, you can now double the duration of those using extend spell. So it's not huge, right? Because most of them at most are a minute. But it would potentially allow you in some instances to extend that duration for whatever it's worth. No ranged smites, no. So any of the ones with durations could have them increase. Again, you're basically going from a minute to 2 minutes. But, you know, honestly, right? Banishing smite, being able to keep... Also, let's be honest, how many of these combats are going to last more than 10 turns? Not many. Does it happen? Sure. And honestly, in that instance, having somebody banished for 2 minutes as opposed to 1 minute could be a big deal for you, especially if you find yourself that banishing that enemy puts you out of a combat scenario because you're casting some sort of ritual spell or whatever. And if you cast it and it was only a minute, then you might not get the spell off because they'd pop back and could maybe knock you out of it. But 2 minutes might be the difference between you succeeding and failing. That could be something. But either way. Heightened spell. Let's see. If the spell forces a creature to make a saving throw to resist its effects, you can spend 2 sorcery points to give them disadvantage. That technically would work for some of these ones that have specific, you know, abilities that are cause a saving throw. Quicken spell doesn't really work because we're already using bonus actions to cast the spells. Seeking spells, the spells trigger on a hit, so seeking spell doesn't work for us. Subtle spell, as we mentioned, would work to avoid being counterspelled. Transmuted spell, do we have any of these? Do they deal, what are the damages? Acid, cold, fire, lightning, poison, or thunder. So, not banishing smite. Blinding smite does radiant. Divine smite does radiant. Shining smite does radiant. Searing smite does fire. So you could use transmuted spell to turn the fire damage from searing smite to either acid, cold, lightning, poison, or thunder. So that's something. Thunderous smite, you could actually turn the thunderous smite damage from thunder to either acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage. So that could be something. It's not like crazy, but it could be fun, you know, depending on what the situation is. If you find like a resistance or a vulnerability situation, you might be able to do something there. And twin spell. This is the one that people were asking, and unfortunately the new version of twin spell does not work. When you cast a spell such as Charm Person or Hold Person that can be cast with a higher level spell slot to target an additional creature, you can spend 1 sorcery point to increase the spell's effective level by 1. Basically meaning that even if you only have access to 3rd level spells, you could spend a sorcery point to make your Charm Person be as if it was cast with a 4th level slot to affect more people. Unfortunately, this version of Twin Spell does not apply to our Smite spells because our Smite spells, when cast at higher level, which they all can be now, which is something to consider, which is nice, that they deal more damage. Except for Banishing Smite. Banishing Smite does not have an upcast for more damage. Now, if Banishing Smite had a thing where you could hit multiple people and banish multiple creatures, then Twin Spell would allow you to basically do another one for a sorcery point. But so there is, in this particular unique instance that we tried to pull up to see, there is some interaction between Sorcerer Meta Magic and Divine Smite, because Divine Smite is now coded as a spell. Now, again, like I said, we don't have the full list of everything, subclass features or otherwise. There might be some real wonky stuff you can do with multi-classing, depending on, like, whatever you can do. Like, are all Paladin spells evocation? No. Right? Isn't a Conjuration Wizard thing, like, they can't, concentration can't be broken? Isn't that a thing for them? Let's see if that's still a thing. Is Conjurer one of the ones? Conjurer didn't make it into this, never mind. Alright, so that was a poor choice. Oh, hold on. Could you get high enough of a level? 10 Paladin. So in a weird turn of events, you could be a 10th level evocation wizard and also have 10 levels of Paladin. And when you cast Divine Smite, the base version of it, which is an evocation spell, you would add your intelligence modifier to the damage of your smite. So, like, you see what I'm saying? Because that's an evocation spell, you get to add things that apply to evocation spells to it. Not the best example, but do you see my point? Like, you could do that, and if they were to update the Conjuration Wizard, which at a certain point had the ability to not have the damage, like, not have damage break their concentration on a spell, then a Paladin using Banishing Smite having potential access to that, if that, I don't even think that works because Banishing Smite's a 5th level spell, but were you to get into some funky situation where you had that, then, like, you could banish somebody with Banishing Smite and never lose concentration via damage because of a Conjuration ability. That's a poor example, again, like I said, because the levels don't work out and equate to what they should. But my point is, there are new options that we have because of the fact that this thing is codified as a spell. Don't cleric get extra damage on their spells, or is that only cantrips? I think it starts as cantrips. It might change to spells later on. Also, if Pact of the Blade still lets you use Charisma for attacks, you can maybe make a Witch Knight without needing to Hexblade. You can be Archfey, yeah. Fighting style to add Wisdom mod, maybe. Yeah, there's some stuff you could do. Range Smite, yeah, well, range smites aren't technically happening. Yeah. Then you'd be a lame Wizard Paladin. I mean, listen. That's true. Paladin dip to get Divine Smite, then focus Wizard for spell slots. You actually could do that because it's a spell. You would continue to get multiple uses, multiple spell slots that way. There's options that you could do. Like I said, I'm not positive on this. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, friendlies. Eldritch Knight Fighter has that thing where they can spend a couple of their attacks at a later level to do spend 2 of their attacks to cast a first or second level spell. So in theory, an Eldritch Knight Fighter with a couple level dip into Paladin could smite multiple times on a turn. But no, because the spell's a bonus action. I don't know. Maybe? No, I guess not. Because the spell is still a bonus action to cast it, so you couldn't do it. That was a cool concept, though, for a second while I was thinking about it. Either way, there's stuff to be worked out with it being codified as a spell. It might lead to some funky shenanigans, which could be interesting. It also could be a negative, as we mentioned, with the concept of counterspell, right? But there also could be some weird stuff you're able to do. Like I said, if there's a magic item that lets you burn hit dice to boost up your spell damage or something like that, you could do that, right? Yes, the Ring of Spell Storing does work, right? You could use a Ring of Spell Storing to store Smite spells in it. You could store your Smite spells in a Ring of Spell Storing and then give it to the fighter, for example, or whatever. There's options that you have here by using the Ring of Spell Storing, assuming that the Ring of Spell Storing in 2024 works the same way as it always has. I don't imagine they'd change it, but if that works the way we think it does, then you could use the Ring of Spell Storing to either store more smites for yourself or to store smites in it to give to somebody else to be able to access said smites. I think they did away with the extra bonus action for thieves. But that would potentially be an option too. Like I said, we don't have the full picture right now. We have snippets of information that we've been given, and then also trying to look back at older Unearthed Arcana to try to piece together what the final situation is going to be. That being said, there might be something to look at that might make this maybe better than we even ever imagined. Honestly, if there was something like a version of Elemental Adept, that feat, maybe it would have a different name, but it was like Elemental Adept, but for radiant damage spells, then that would work for smites. And honestly, I do feel like there should be a version of Elemental Adept, something similar to that for the other damage types, for like Force, Psychic, Radiant, Necrotic, whether you call it Elemental Adept or some other term. If there was a feat that existed that was like that, then you could give that to a Paladin, and then it would allow them to overcome resistance to radiant damage, and then also treat all 1s on those dies as 2s, right? Stuff like that. Like little things you could do because it's technically considered a spell and not a feature. So yeah, listen, Sarah, I agree. Listen, if you go back earlier in the video, or if you were here the whole time, you know I was kind of harping on it pretty hard. But I try to be a positive person. I'm having not the best day, if I'm being honest with you, but so I'm trying to be positive where I can here. Somebody said Celestial Warlock. Let's go take a look at that. Okay. Oh, this is actually a good combo. Good connection here. Radiant Soul. Let's pull this up here. Hang on. Radiant Celestial Patron Warlock. Radiant Soul at 6th level. You have resistance to radiant damage, and when you cast a spell that deals radiant or fire damage, you can add your charisma modifier to one radiant or fire damage roll of that spell against one of its targets. That tracks. And that's honestly, we're all in the charisma family. You're gonna possibly be able... Oh, guys, this might be it. This is it. This is what we're talking about. Okay, hang on. Let's scroll up. Because they changed the way pacts and stuff worked, right? So you don't have pact boons anymore. You have invocations. And the invocation is the... Okay, hang on. Where is it? Gift of the... What the hell is it called? Pact of the Blade. Okay. As a bonus action, trace arcane sigils, blah, blah, blah. Choose a simple or martial weapon. You have bond with it. Whenever you attack with the bonded weapon, you can use your charisma modifier for strength or for attack and damage rolls instead of strength or dexterity. And you can cause the weapon to deal either necrotic, psychic, or radiant damage, or its normal weapon damage type. So we're gonna go. At least we could do 6 Warlock, 14 Paladin. I don't know, whatever it is, right? Maybe 14 Warlock, 6 Paladin, but Pact of the Blade. We now have a weapon that we can use that is based on our charisma. Okay, what other features can we get here? We can get... Let us look. Hang on. There's a couple of them. Eldritch Smite. Oh, no. Hold on. Eldritch Smite at level 5. Once per turn, when you hit a creature with your pact weapon, you can expend a Warlock spell slot to deal an extra d8 force damage to the target, plus another d8 per level of the spell slot. And you can give the target the prone condition if it's huge or smaller. Keep that in mind. We're going to keep that one. And then Life Drinker at level 9. Whenever you hit a creature with your pact weapon, you can deal an extra d6 necrotic, radiant, or psychic damage, your choice. And you can expend one of your hit die and roll it to regain a number of hit points equal to the roll plus your constitution modifier. And then there's another one in here somewhere. Thirsting Blade. You gain the extra attack feature for your pact weapon. With that feature, you can attack twice with this weapon. When you reach level 11 in this class, you can make 2 attacks rather than 1. So now, you could be, with this Celestial Patron Warlock Paladin situation we've got, if you're 11 levels in Warlock, you can make 3 attacks a turn. Your attacks just flat out deal an extra d6 necrotic, radiant, or psychic damage, and you can heal from it. You also can burn your Eldritch Smite to do extra damage, on top of the fact that you could use your bonus action to do a Divine Smite as well. And then because we're Celestial Pact Warlock, we can also deal our Charisma modifier in additional damage on top of the weapon damage, on top of the Eldritch Smite damage, on top of the Divine Smite damage. And remember, we can cast one of our Divine Smite spells for free without spending a spell slot because it's a thing that's granted from the feature. So there's stuff to be done here, folks. We can do some real funky combos. If Paladins still get like Radiant Strikes, then maybe it's better to go with that where you're going to have extra damage that way. There's options here to be sure. We've kind of just, like I said, we barely started to crack the code. And that's, again, all based on the assumptions that recent Unearthed Arcanas are the same as what we're going to see in the final version. But with a little bit of digging around, we found a way to juice up Divine Smite damage by adding our Charisma modifier on top of that. And then again, even if you don't go full tilt into Warlock, but just with a couple of these pact options, you can now be completely Charisma based, dealing extra damage with self-healing, and then double burning slots to juice up the damage. So there's definitely things to be said that might be better off. And like I said, I can't think of it off of the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there are magic items that let you burn charges to juice damage on spells, which should work with this as well. Can bards use magical secrets to learn smites? I think so. I'd have to remember what the new version of the bard looks like to see, but I think they might have access to those, possibly the smite spells, as well as find Steed potentially. Let's see. If find Steed improves with higher level spell slots, it might be stronger for bards and paladins. Very true. Light Cleric can also do something with radiant damage. I think I'm not sure on that one. The math about the surge attack is insane. Yep, agreed. So Warlock 11, Paladin 9. It's hard to say because we still don't have the final versions of things. That's not bad because 9 Paladin will get you, what is that, 3rd level Paladin spells? Which isn't bad, and it'd get you the Abjure Foes feature and stuff. So there's something to possibly Warlock 11, Paladin 9, or maybe you just downgrade it for the double feats, Warlock 12, Paladin 8. So yeah. So anyway, like I said, trying to keep it positive, not having the best day myself, so I'm trying to bring some positivity where I can to help all of you have a better day. And hopefully, like I said, once we get the full book in hand, we can maybe really truly crack open some wild options. And then once the Dungeon Master Guide releases and we have access to all the magic items, maybe we can do something there too. There's definitely options to be had, and maybe it's not all as doom and gloom as we thought with Paladin Smite becoming a spell. Yeah, it definitely sucks in comparison to the 2014 version, and if you love that and love the supernova damage that you could do as a Paladin, I get it. You're gonna be upset, and there's probably nothing they're gonna be able to do is gonna make you happy and feel like whole, as it were, again. But again, you could play 2014 version of a character at a 2024 table. I'm not entirely sure how that would look because, like I said, they did say there's some language and like conversion information there. I think that was geared more towards initially subclasses, but maybe a whole base class. But honestly, you might be playing a 2014 Paladin at a table with a 2024 Paladin and be like, damn, I kind of wish my land handles bonus actions. Damn, you could do all this stuff. 4 channel divinities or 3, whatever it is. That's pretty cool. And then you might be like, I kind of wish I'd done the 2024. Who knows? But yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah. I appreciate it. Yeah. I think I'm going to call it quits for the day, folks. I'll be back tomorrow covering the Barbarian will be tomorrow's video. Again, the goal will be to be as close to possible as the launch. Because of what happened today, it just didn't really work out to do it as close to the launch as possible. But yeah. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you're around tonight and you've got nothing to do, you can head on over to Captain Robert's Twitch channel. And I'll be playing my Theodore the Orange, my orange geomancy themed wizard in his Vecna Eve of Ruin campaign. So if you want to come hang out and chat with me, I'll be there live in the live stream. The game's kind of wild at the moment, so there's a bunch of awesome people in the cast there, and you get to see me play a wizard who's basically me, right? A guy who grew up studying rocks, and now deals with magic, which is kind of basically my life story in a nutshell. So, anyway, I just wanted to thank you all for being awesome and continuing to support me in all that I do. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hope to catch you in Robert's live stream later this evening. And if not, I'll catch you all tomorrow for the Barbarian live stream. So, again, thank you all so much for watching. And I'll see you next time.